Welcome to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast, where we provide education and resources for family matters in Polk, Highlands, and Hardy counties. June is National Reunification Month, and in this special episode of Let's Talk About It, we connect with Reba, Brooke, and Allie, three moms who faced the struggles of addiction, navigated the child welfare system, and successfully reunified with their children. These incredible moms now serve on Heartland for Children's Parent Advisory Council to help improve the foster care system and be a message of hope to other parents within the system. In this conversation, they break down the topic of parent guilt and what it looks like to walk through healing and rebuild trust with their children post-reunification. Now, let's talk about it.
Hi, my name is Reba, and welcome to the Let's Talk About It podcast. Today, I have with me...
Hi, my name is Brooke.
And I'm Allie.
And we're here to talk about parent guilt with reunification.
So we three are a part of the Parent Advisory Council here at Heartland for Children. Basically, that just means that we have all been through the system and we all each have our own story and lived experience.
So describe what your first experience with parent guilt was like.
Well, for me, my story starts out with domestic violence and substance abuse. So for me, the first initial instant I got with parent guilt was even before I was even in the system. I realized that my kids were going through a lot, but I didn't know how to get out of the situation I was in. So that was hard enough. But I think where parent guilt really got me was I went to jail right before my youngest daughter's third birthday at the time. She was my youngest, and I was terrified of missing her birthday. And I'd never, even in addiction, I'd never missed any important events. I never missed Christmas, never missed birthdays, any of those things. My kids had never really been without me until they got into the system and they were placed with my dad. So for me, I realized that there was a possibility I could miss her birthday, and that parent guilt is actually what got me to check myself into rehab. So for me, parent guilt is good, but it's also bad because there's a lot of different emotions that come with it. And with each child, there's a different level of parent guilt. So for me, it's a wide array of emotions.
Yeah.
What about you, Brooke?
So I agree with Reba. I have experienced so many different levels and forms of parent guilt. Going all the way back to I was a teen mom with my first child. So with that, there was a lot of parent guilt. But circling around my addiction, it would probably have to be when it really started affecting me was also when I went to jail. I had DCF involved, and, my daughter was taken away from me for the first time ever. And then I had a second baby, and I was missing his very first Christmas. And in that, I knew that moment something had to change, because obviously when you're in jail, you cannot do anything. You cannot go anywhere. You cannot talk to anybody unless it is, during the allotted time. And it was like a punch to the gut. And I'm telling you, I have never experienced grief and sadness like I did that day. And in that moment, I knew that something had to change. What about you?
So my very first mom guilt was when my oldest, Ryder, I was using while I was pregnant. And I knew that it was bad. But I couldn't stop. Mm-hmm. And I felt guilty the entire time. And then it just, I had two more kids, and I used while pregnant with them. And the addiction was just so much that I felt guilty because I knew I was hurting them, I was hurting myself, but I couldn't ask for help. And when I did get help, I felt so ashamed and just like the biggest piece of crap. And I think the biggest one of all was when I had my daughter. Why could I have a sober pregnancy for her, but I couldn't do it for the other 3? Like, why did I value her life more over theirs? And in all reality, I didn't value her life more. I was finally sober and healthy. And I just, even today, I still think about that a lot. And like, it's a guilt that I can't get rid of. It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand that because I have 2 younger children now. Now that, you know, I'm sober and I've been sober for 4 years, and, you know, I got married to someone completely different, and the relationship I have with him is completely different than the relationship that I have with the girls' dad.
Yeah.
So the relationship is better and it's healthier, and my life is healthier and my life is normal, and, you know, and my younger 2 that I have now get to experience those things. But my older 2, they've never got to experience that. They will never remember what it was like to have a normal life with me and their father. But my younger girls will. You know, I'm married to their dad. You know, I have a normal life. Their dad gets up and goes to work every day. You know, they're at home with me. Like, they have normalcy since they were born. My other 2 didn't get that. So even though I might not have used during my pregnancies, my children get to experience 2 different lives. And for me, that's guilt on its own because, you know, my younger 2 get that, but why can't I give that to my older 2? You know, so I think that guilt is really wide ranged because, you know, when you have children in sobriety versus children that had to go through addiction with you, it makes that parent guilt that much harder. And I think that's where parents try to compensate for the kids that had to go through so much. You feel like you need to give them more. You feel like you need to, I won't say baby them more, but kind of that way. Yep. Because you feel like they didn't get that protection then, so you kind of want to give it to them now. I think that comes in hand when it comes to sober kids versus kids that had to.
Yeah, I can relate a lot because, you know, I had my first child at 17, and, you know, she's my pre-addiction child. So she had to go through everything with me, you know, me leaving her with my mom, you know, coming in and out. And then I had a child during addiction, which I also used with, so I can 100% relate with that. And then I have my youngest after addiction baby. So I have one at each stage, and it's like I can totally relate with the wanting to coddle your child before and during for me, because it's like I messed up so much, and it's like now, like my youngest, he doesn't have to experience a lick of anything that they went through. You know, my daughter, she was left with my mom. Like, granted, she was in, you know, good hands and taken care of and stuff, but she didn't get to see me for, you know, chunks of time. And then my middle son, he had to be placed with a family member because of my DCF case, and I used with him. Luckily, and by the grace of God, nothing happened to him. Amen. And then my youngest, he doesn't know what any of that is. So it's like grief comes and parent guilt comes in so many different stages and forms. It is relatable across the board.
It really is.
So in what ways did you guys get support from the system or resources to help you?
I got assistance from DCF through Tri-County, which is the substance abuse part of it. I actually was doing the outpatient at first, and the outpatient really wasn't doing much for me because I could still leave the outpatient and still go and do what I wanted to. It wasn't like, there was really much structure for that. So for me, that didn't really do much. I kind of was able to pinpoint when they were going to call my color. Yeah. So I kind of knew ways around that. So for me, Tri-County really stepped in once I got out, and I asked my peer support through Tri-County for actual treatment. Yeah. And then they got with my caseworker, and they all came up with New Beginnings Women, and that's where I was eventually placed, and that's where I got clean. And they helped my parents, because my dad's the one that had my older daughters. So they helped my parents get beds and stuff for them for their house and things like that. So that's how I got assistance through the system. They helped my parents maintain my children while I had to be away for the 9 months it takes to go through treatment. and they partnered with Tri-County to help get me somewhere so I could actually like function as a normal human being again.
Yeah. What about you, Allie?
In my first couple cases, they Tri-County, and I think that kind of goes along for all of us. Even though our stories are so different, and so we have one key determining factor. We all went to the same Tri-County and New Beginnings Women, and I swear if it wasn't for New Beginnings Women, like, they saved my life.
Yeah, I can agree.
So did the DOC for violating me. Appreciate that, guys. I wasn't really given many resources. I was always told you had to go do this, you had to go do that. And when I needed help with food stamps or anything, oh, you don't qualify, or you make too much. And I'm like, you guys take all my money. So I need some assistance. I will say the one main resource they did give me was when I went to Razoo in the beginning. That inpatient treatment was pretty good, but I definitely needed longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Razoo is a good program, but I think sometimes it's a little too short for a lot of addicts.
Mm-hmm.
They let me leave early because of good behavior, but
Yeah.
that was my manipulation tactics.
Yeah, that's also becomes a problem. That's why long-term treatment works a lot better. You can't really manipulate people who are in the same room with you every day, day in and day out for 9 months. They
damn sure try, don't they?
You can't really get those ones. They learn you a little too well. So how did you guys navigate all the emotions, though, that come with being a parent in the foster system with your children?
So again, treatment genuinely helped me. There were days and nights and just hundreds of hours spent crying over my kids, and just the overwhelming amount of guilt as a newly sober person, a mom who has a DCF case and it's active, and I do not have my children. I am in rehab for the first time. So I would say just building a support system, a strong support system. My counselor at rehab, she was really, really awesome. Just teaching me coping skills, how to navigate, it's okay to feel this guilt. It's okay to feel sad and feel every emotion that I've numbed for the past 5 years. So mainly just trudging through it, making sure that you are surrounded with people who actually care about you and want the best for you and understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, and allowing you to feel it, and just guiding me through those emotions. I still deal with parent guilt now. It's just a matter of reaching out to people that I know can relate to me. Like you guys who have been through the same things that I've been through. I know we'll call each other and just be like, oh my gosh. Or I'll text you and be like, listen. And it's I know that there's no guilt coming from you guys or judgment or anything. Y'all are there for me. And it's been 5 years. You know what I'm saying? So I think having a very strong support system, having people, even if it's just one person that you can rely on, just reach out to them and tell them how you're feeling, tell them, where you are at currently, and allow yourself to feel those feelings.
I agree.
Yeah, I can't really say much on that one because I think you said it the best.
Yeah.
So how did you guys maintain a connection with your children during the time you were separated?
Well, I was in treatment. So for me, it was those nightly phone calls with my kids every night. We actually got into a routine. They were the first person that I would call on my phone calls, and it was, we would talk about their day, we would talk about how things went, and then we had a song we sang before we got off the phone, and that for them was the biggest connection point to me, because that song was their routine. They knew that before they got off the phone with me, we were going to sing that song, and that was going to be their good night. I couldn't give them a hug and a kiss, but I could sing with them, and that made them happy.
Yeah.
Trying not to cry, but for them, that was their biggest how we stayed connected with our bond, because I've always had a bond with my kids. I was only separated from them for almost a year, not even a full year. So for me to not be there with them was very abnormal. And then home visits every weekend. Like, I did not take my home visit with anyone else. I did not care about anyone else. Everybody else can see me after I got out. My kids are my priority. So every home visit was spent with my children. So for me, it was just maintaining contact at all points and times. If I had a free moment and I was allowed to use a phone, I was calling my children, because it's important for them to know that I'm not there, but I'm there.
Yeah. I would say the same things. It was a little different for my daughter just because of who she was placed with. So phone calls, I wish those would have been a thing. But like you said, the home passes, every weekend that I was able to go home and spend time with my kids, like, that's where I was at. I was with nobody else unless you were family and with my children, because that was the most important thing to me. And my second son, he was still like an infant at the time, so I was able to get visits with him in the treatment center, which at the time, you know, I was fresh in recovery, so it was really like a shell shock type situation. But even those little visits and then the home visits were the biggest things for me.
I think mine, because at different times I was in different situations, whether I was in jail, I just wasn't allowed to be in the home with them. If I got off work, I went straight over to where they were. I spent every little bit of time with them. When I was in jail, because jail phone calls are expensive. Every Wednesday, like, the boys knew that they would get to talk to me, and I would talk to them. When I got into treatment, then we just developed the same routine. I was allowed, before my blackout, to have phone calls with my kids, because I was such an active parent in their life. So that once a week or a couple times a week, you know, then I was able to talk to them every night. And same with home passes. I didn't know anybody else. There wasn't anybody else that was important enough to take my kids' spot. And seeing them and getting to, you know, keep that bond that we had, it's very important, especially for my oldest, who had separation issues. I would just take off in my drug use, you know?
Yeah.
And he would stand at the door and cry and cry and cry. And, you know, a lot of guilt stemmed from that too. So I think, you know, making sure that I instilled that bond and stayed connected with him was important. So after reunification, how have you and your family worked together to heal and move forward from the separation and the guilt, like all that experience?
For us, it mainly stems back to making sure that we get one-on-one time with each of our kids. Obviously, we do family outings, and, you know, like, we go fishing with the boys, and then I'll do something separate with Kenzie because she's not really into that type of stuff. When we're just at home, like, just showing them, I think, and I truly believe, actions speak louder than words, especially with children, because, like, for Kenzie, for the longest time during my addiction, you know, the same thing that Ryder had, you know, she always had this constant lingering fear. Well, are you coming back? Are you coming back? Are you coming back? And it was mainly like I focused on that lack of, you know, trust that she had in me in that area, and was just like reassurance for her. And again, just actions speak louder than words. Like, tell her that I'm coming home, and then coming home, you know. I have sat down and had conversations with her, not so much with my younger ones, because he didn't even remember anything that happened. He just remembered he spent a lot of time with his papa. But for her, like, I have sat down and I have explained it in a child-friendly way, you know, why I did some of the things that I did, what I did to correct those things, and, you know, obviously didn't go into extent like, hey, this is what mommy was doing, but I just let her know, like, mommy was extremely sick for a very long time. Who she was then, I am not that person anymore. Like, I am your mom. And just building that trust back up with her has been crucial, and now we are closer than we have ever been. You know, she's a preteen girl, so we have our spats sometimes. But I truly believe, like, me sitting down and putting in that work to build the bridge of where it was broken the most, which was the trust with her, that now, you know, we are closer than ever. Like, when I pick her up from school, she just starts blabbing about everything, and it's like, those little things are just, it's reassurance for me to know that I have done the necessary steps to rebuild those bonds. And, you know, now we uphold them by having one-on-one time with our kids. You know, like, we spend a lot of time whenever Clay gets off of work, like, we spend a lot of time outside with them, like, interacting, playing, you know, riding bikes, just all of those things to pour back into what is most important to me now because of, you know, where I was lacking before.
Yeah, we do a lot of those things too. Like she said, like, it is important to, my kids had the same thing, especially Emma, my 7-year-old. She had that too. She would stand at the door because, like, I would leave too. You know, I didn't want to be at my dad's because, you know, I knew what I was doing and I knew, you know, how my dad and them felt, and I was like, all right, so I would just leave. And Emma would do the same thing. And when I first got reunified, Emma did the same thing. I'd go to work and Emma would be like, well, when are you going to be home? Yeah. So it is important to make sure you keep your word, but ours looks a little different because I wish I could have one-on-one time with my kids, but I have the 2 babies. So one-on-one time isn't so easy. It's not practical to just, you know, for me to just take one of the kids and do something. It's not that simple for us. So ours looks like a lot of family time. Like last night, movie night. They came home from school. They did their homework. They did their chores. You know, and then we sit down and, you know, we watch a movie and they fell asleep in the living room, and, you know, that's fine. You know, those are the kind of things we do, you know, taking them to places like Urban Air to spend family time together, to, you know, do those things, jump on trampolines with them. You know, little things is what matters the most to them. They don't really care about what the activity is as long as it's an activity. So that's important too. But I also instill in them kind of the same thing you do. I'm very honest with my children. I'm very, very honest. Like, my kids know I've been to jail. They know that I spent 9 months in a treatment center. They don't know every little detail, like, you know. But I'm very honest with my kids. If they have a question, I am going to answer it, because lying to them or trying to sugarcoat it for them isn't doing them any favors. You know, their dad is sitting in prison and he got himself there, and my kids have questions about that. And I might not come out and be like, well, this is exactly what your dad did. Because even though he's not the most responsible parent, it's not my job to help them form an opinion of him. But it is my job to be honest with my kids about the fact that their parents have passed. You know, they need to be fully aware of what their family history looks like. They need to be fully aware that, you know, addiction is a family disease. It's a thing. It can go down from generation to generation, and it's very important that my kids understand that. It's important for me to make sure my kids get that point, so that way they don't make the same mistakes I did, so they don't go down the same path as me and their father. So for me, it is a lot of family time, a lot of honesty, a lot of hard conversations, you know, but that also helps them deal with their trauma, and it helps me deal with mine, because they had to go through something, and the more they understand about why they went through it, the easier it's going to be for them to deal with that trauma later. So it's very important for kids to feel like you're not hiding things from them. It helps them become adults that can handle their feelings, instead of adults that try to, like, hide their feelings, then wind up in the same place as we did.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree that, and I like how you touched base on it helps them heal from their trauma that they experienced from us, which is a big thing for me and my daughter, because she experienced a brunt of it. You know, my son, he was a newborn, so it's like, by me helping her heal her, it also helps me heal me. And together, like, we build from that. And it's like, she's, you know, still a child, but starting now is building those steps for her to be successful, and, you know, informing them and educating them of things that we have been through, so they do not go down the same road, you know? I think that's super important.
So looking back, like, what would advice would you give to parents that are currently going through the system and struggling with, like, the similar things that we've been through and the similar feelings of guilt and shame and all of those fun emotions that come along with post-reunification? And
Yeah. The best advice that I could give is allow yourself to feel things. We've spent however many years that we do in addiction numbing those feelings. It's okay to feel things.
Yeah. But it's true though. What you just said is very true. You do have to feel those feelings, because ignoring those feelings are what got us where we were to begin with.
Right.
It's not always fun to feel your feelings. It's not the most comfortable thing, especially if it's your kid that's like, that's like, hey mom, you remember when this happened? And I'm like,
yep, sure do.
Yeah, sure do. Wish you didn't.
Yeah.
It's those moments that, make you realize that, it's okay. I mean, it sucks. It sucks, especially hearing from something you created, what you've done.
Yeah.
But it's okay, because, at the end of the day, the only way to get over those feelings are feeling those feelings.
Is going through them.
So, that's the root. You basically, set it, feeling your
feelings. And I think I would also suggest, do not let the hard days win.
No.
There are going to be hard days. There are going to be days that you just want to give up and run and go the opposite way and throw everything away that you've already accomplished. Do not let the hard days win. There will be better days. It does get better. You get better, and your situation's going to get better.
And coping skills are important too. My daughter's ADHD, so we use a lot of coping skills that I learned.
Yeah.
Coping skills are not just for addicts. They can be used on children. Move a muscle, change a thought. My daughter has a hard time struggling with, just emotions in general. Being ADHD, it's a lot harder for them to process. So sometimes I break it down for her, take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out, calm down, sit down, go take a shower. Shower is a great concept. It changes your body temperature, it changes your feelings, It changes your mood. There's things that you can do for yourself, but you can also pass down to your children, and your children can use those. There's another one, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Use your coping skills. If you have been taught any type of coping skill at all, pass it to your child. It is important for them to learn, just like you had to learn how to deal with all of those different emotions.
I agree.
I think speaking your truth, because when it comes to guilt and shame and any of those feelings, we don't really want to speak up, because we do feel guilty, and we don't want other people to know that, hey, this is what I did. Be open, be honest with yourself, be open-minded, and be willing to make the change and to get through it. The how is used in recovery: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, but I think it applies to, feeling guilt and dealing with it, because you can't get over something or get through it unless you're honest about it and you're willing to, come face to face with whether it's what you did or how things went.
All right, so is there anything you wish the foster care system would do differently to support parents in coping with guilt and facilitating a smoother reunification process?
Absolutely. I would love for them to recognize that parent guilt is a real thing. A lot of different people believe that it is just another emotion, or, you're being too much. But in all reality, when you're going through the reunification process and you have to go through all this stuff, you're still feeling everything that you went through, and all those new emotions are still coming about. So just listen to the parent. Let them tell you how they feel and how things are going, because a lot of parents aren't heard. They come in there and you do what you want, but you're coming into that parent's home, and if the parent is in a good place, everything will go smoother. But only you can help them get through all that. There are resources you can give. There are groups. I mean, if there was a parent guilt group, I'm pretty sure I would have went to that meeting.
I'd probably still go to this day.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
I deal with a lot of guilt still constantly from everything that I've done. And it's a process.
Yeah.
Everything's a process. It takes time.
I think it could really benefit from the case management too, though. Helping parents celebrate little wins. Like, I understand these are things that parents are supposed to do on a daily basis. I get that.
Yeah.
I understand that completely. I'm a parent. I absolutely understand. But the problem also comes with, there's a reason why that parent is using drugs. There's a reason why that parent can't cope themselves. So, yeah, okay, a clean drug test to you might be great. That's what you were supposed to do all along.
Right.
Yep.
We know that.
But I'm aware of that. But the fact that I just walked into a building and I peed in a cup and I knew for a fact that nobody was going to come after me for it was like one of the best feelings when I first got out. I literally took a picture of the first clean test that I had and I sent it to all of the people that were in my support group. I was like, look, it's clean. Those are important. It sounds real dumb whenever you say it to normal people, to people who have never been through this type of stuff. To them, it's like, okay, and you got a clean test. Well, I got a clean test, and you wouldn't believe how many I failed before this. So
right.
For us, those are big things. And for a case management to recognize that, hey, good job. You passed your drug test. You got employment. That's awesome. You're doing the next step. You've maintained contact with your kids. That is phenomenal. There's little things that caseworkers can do that can make the biggest difference. And for a parent to hear that coming from the person who is actively trying to take their child, it's going to change the relationship. It's going to change the dynamic. It's going to change the way that parent looks at that caseworker. It could even change the way that caseworker looks at that parent. The more you encourage somebody, the more willing they're going to be to do what they need to do, and that's really what makes a difference.
I also agree with that, and I think celebrating those small wins with the parents also builds the foundation for trust and having that good relationship between the two. I would also highly suggest giving grace to parents when it is needed. They are going through a lot, and again, like you said, unless you have been through it yourself, you cannot speak for anyone who is going through it. It's a lot emotionally, mentally, physically, on every level. It is a lot. So if you see a parent that is struggling, because when you are given a case plan, it's lengthy. You have this, and this that you need done before this date.
Yep.
And it's it's hard to do. It is very overwhelming. So giving grace to parents when you see them struggling a little bit, or, read the room kind of vibe. If you can sense that something is off, don't automatically jump to, are you using again? Do we need to drug test you? Do we need to put you in this counseling or this? Just sit down and, talk to them. Talk to them like they are normal people, because we are just experiencing life a little bit differently and having, rough waters.
Yeah.
So just giving grace, and what these ladies said as well, I think it would just all tie into a much smoother process, because also when you are being reunified with your children after not having them, for me personally, it was a shell shock. It was obviously I adore being a mother. I was over the moon, ecstatic to get my children back, but it was also a lot. I had just spent 9 months living with grown women, dealing with nothing but myself and the emotions that came with everything, and then giving me my kids back. Again, I was grateful, but it's a lot. It's basically becoming a parent all over again, because the parent I was before is not the parent that I am now.
True.
And it's if just understanding your parents and being there and helping them, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything from me today? Do we need to talk? What are some things that I can help you with,
But also, I think it's important to never have that could never be me mindset.
Yes.
I don't think you should ever have that, because you know, we might not know what it's like to be a normal person. You know, we might not be normal, but there's a lot of people that I know that have said it could never be me, and then it turned around and it was them.
Yes.
You know, that's something that I think is important also when you're dealing with people who are coming out of situations like that. Like, especially if you work in that field, do not ever, ever, ever have that it could never be me mindset. Because just because you're working in a field today that, you know that you're doing the right thing, and you know that you're clean, and you know that you've never had those problems, and you don't have the traumas, and you don't have those things. Well, that's wonderful, but you could get into an accident one day and take that first pain pill, and then there you go.
Yeah.
You know, there's always that chance. So I don't think ever having the it can never be me mindset is going to get you a lot farther than having the it can never be me mindset.
Yeah, I agree.
I like how you brought that up, because when I went to New Beginnings, Miss Sheila had walked into the room, and it was one day, and one thing I'd always spoke on is, you know, I had a substantial amount of clean time before I relapsed again. And I was the I got it girl, because I had it. I had my recovery. I wasn't going to, you know, and that's what Miss Sheila called me. Okay, I got it, girl. I didn't have crap because I relapsed.
Yeah.
Wound my ass right back in.
Me and Brooke were actually just talking about that, because you know, the people around you really help facilitate that, because I have a problem with anxiety. So I bounce my leg a whole lot.
Oh my goodness.
And I'd get into group and I'd sit down and she'd look at me and she'd be like, ground yourself, child, or ground yourself, girl. Like she would never let me take it farther than what it needed to go, because she knew it wasn't healthy for me.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's important is realizing when somebody needs that help.
Yeah.
Because sometimes
and extending that hand to them, like just you know, being there for people who need us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think this has been great, guys.
I do too.
So, does anybody else have anything for today?
I think we're good.
I do not.
Well, thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Let's Talk About It. I'm Allie.
I'm Brooke.
And I'm Reba.
And we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast. There is a great need for foster families who are willing to open their hearts and homes to teens, sibling groups, and children with special needs. To learn more, check out the description for resources or visit heartlandforchildren.org.